The sitting to standing transfer is the most important transfer to be able to maintain the activities of daily living, which a dementia resident needs to be able to do in a dementia facility. Similarly, the sitting to standing transfer is essential when you're taking the person out, say, in a wheelchair for a trip. There are actually 4 sitting to standing transfers that are required to go from the lounge chair in the dementia unit into the wheelchair, into the car, and then into the home, in the lounge chair in the home. That takes 4 sitting to standing transfers, and likewise 4 sitting to standing transfers going back, meaning 8. So the quadriceps muscle at the front of the thigh has to be very strong. It has to have a certain amount of integrated strength to be able to do these sitting to standing transfers, and they weaken with age. So it's very important that they're kept strong to be able to do these transfers, intentionally strong. And it does take effort. I mean, getting out of a chair, say in the dementia unit, from the lounge chair to standing, especially if you've got long femurs and you're tall, it takes a lot of leverage to be able to get out of a chair and to be able to work against gravity to stand up. So it's important that the person has training and exercises to be able to maintain the strength in this muscle. Quadriceps muscle is the second biggest muscle in the body. The first is gluteus maximus in the buttocks, second is quadriceps, third latissimus dorsi of the back, and then the pectoral muscles. So these big muscles weaken as we get older, and quadriceps muscle in particular, after the age of about 60, it's a few percent a year that the muscle will deteriorate, unless of course you exercise, that being the important point. It's very important to exercise the quadriceps muscle specifically to be able to maintain that all-important transfer of sitting to standing. Now, ways in which you can increase the strength in quadriceps, I'll go into that now, starting from a dementia unit. I mean, if you've been fit and strong all your life, if you've been climbing mountains or, climbing hills, or you're a tramper, or, you enjoy swimming and running around kicking a ball or football or whatever exercise that requires leg strength, that of course, running up hills is a good one. That of course helps a lot. If you've maintained leg strength throughout your life, then come into a dementia facility, you've got that added advantage to start with, that your legs are strong enough certainly to be able to do sitting to standing. But if you're a lady in your 80s or 90s, and you've got Alzheimer's dementia and you haven't been into sport, you don't really like exercising that much, and now you're having to stand out of a chair and your legs are quite weak, it's very difficult. In fact, at the dementia unit I worked at, I really noticed those women that were into tramping in the mountains, tramping in the bush, which is a really popular pastime in New Zealand. They were much better at being able to get out of their chairs. Their sitting to standing transfer was good. And most of them didn't need walkers, whereas the ones that hadn't been into tramping or walking or exercising, definitely their leg strength was weaker. They were all on walkers, and it was hard for them to get out of a chair. Because if you can't get out of a chair with the sitting to standing transfer, you can't stay at the unit, at the dementia unit, because you're not independent. You need to be independent in these transfers to be able to go from lying to sitting to standing when you get out of your bed in the morning. That's a sitting to standing transfer. That's the first one of the day. Then, of course, sitting to standing from the toilet. That's the second transfer, generally. And then, of course, when you're in the lounge, sitting to standing transfer before each meal, because you have to walk to the dining lounge to have your meal. Then, of course, after the meal, you have to stand again to get onto the walker, to go back to the lounge. Then, of course, 3 or 4 times a day, you have to do the transfer going to the toilet. So there's a lot of sitting and standing. And unless that wonderful quadriceps muscle is strong, it's just, it's an ordeal. It's always an ordeal for people that have weak legs to get out of chairs. It's hard work. So that's why it's important that the dementia resident goes to the exercise classes. It's essential that they go to the exercise classes, especially if they've got weak legs. I mean, even if they haven't got weak legs, it's important to go. But if they have got weak legs and they can't get out of the chair, they need to be able to strengthen them to stay at the unit. Otherwise, if they're not independent, they can't stay because there's not the staff ratio to manage it. In a dementia unit, there's 1 staff member to about 8 or 9 residents, whereas in the hospital, there's 1 staff member to 5 residents. So they're not mobile in the hospital. A lot of them can't stand from sitting. And they also have hoists that they can use to help people transfer from the bed to the chair, etc. But certainly they've got none of that mechanisation, no hoists in a dementia unit. That's why the person themselves has to be independent. I mean, of course, staff help, and a lot of the time they have to help a lot to, get the person out of the chair or up from the bed. Bad backs into the bargain. It's hard work, but most of the effort has to come from the resident. If it gets to the point that they're actually not able to stand out of their chair, even with assistance, they'll definitely have to go to the hospital, which is, it's much better to be in the dementia unit if at all possible. Now, the other way, so the exercise classes, there's lots of quadriceps training there for the person to be able to strengthen their quadriceps, which is, straightening out lifting the foot, straightening the knee, tightening the knee, holding it. That will increase its strength. Sitting to standing, of course, strengthens the muscle actively on the spot because you have to strengthen it to do the activity. But it's also important to do other activities as well. Now, up and down stairs is a very good way of strengthening quadriceps. So when visiting your parent, if you can, if the dementia unit is upstairs, then taking them for a couple of times up and down the stairs is a really good idea. Holding on to one side of the stairs with their hand. You don't need, the walking stick or walking accessory. The person with dementia holds on to one side of the stairs with their right hand, and then you hold on to their other hand on their left-hand side. So they've got support both sides, so they're perfectly safe. And going up and down the stairs will really help strengthen those quadriceps. Actually, there was one resident at the unit. She was a lovely lady, and she came in. She was really fit when she came in because she was a big tramper. Her and her husband were trampers. They used to walk in the hills and mountains regularly every weekend, and she deteriorated quite quickly. But her husband used to take her for a walk every day and up and down the steps every day. Every day he would do that with her. And she maintained that leg strength enough to be able to be independent for 5 years at the unit. So that was remarkable, the effort that he put into that. So this is how, if the person can remain independent and strong with these, keep these muscles strong. I mean, walking outside, of course, helps, especially if there's a little bit of a tilt, slightly hilly ground or up and down the curbs. Any variation from plain flat terrain will help quadriceps. And that's why in a dementia unit, because it's totally flat, all day walking along flat terrain, the person doesn't get a chance to be able to strengthen their quadriceps unless they have these extra activities such as exercise classes, walking outside, up and down stairs, etc. So this is the importance of the all-important sitting to standing transfer. It's vital. Okay, so I've written these 2 books, The Resident's Voice and The Resident's Rise, both from a dementia unit, on Amazon, on my website. And thank you for your looks and your likes, and I really appreciate the recent subscriptions as well. Please pass on these links to others that are working with people with dementia. Thank you.